So when Christine first asked me to run, we've been good friends for a few years. At first, I didn't know what to think, but I thought that this was a great opportunity to expand on the representation we have in our town. And I think this was the first step forward and a really good opportunity to kind of build on that movement that she started a few years ago. My name is Jason Lew, and I'm also the candidate.
What does it really take to run for local office? On The Candidate, we're pulling back the curtain on the messy, expensive, and sometimes bizarre world of local politics. Join us as we share the unfiltered truth about what happens before you see those campaign signs pop up in your neighborhood. I'm your host, Jess Milanis. We're following serial entrepreneur Dave Kerpen as he dives headfirst into the world of local politics. Ready for a change in the world? This is your opportunity to be the candidate.
A new candidate.
What?
Welcome, Jason. Welcome back to the show. Jess,
Thank
good
you.
to see you again. This is the special two-part episode with Jason, and he didn't mention this, but Jess, as we talked about before the show, when Jason wins as the town clerk in North Hempstead, you will be the first ever Asian American elected to townwide office in the fifth largest town in America here in Long Island. So to me, that's a very, very big deal. Like, I don't like. Do you think that's? I think that's a very big deal. Have you gotten feedback like, "Wow, this is so cool that you're doing this" from anyone in your community?
Yeah, so people that I know, have kind of praised me and said this is a great opportunity, right? It's really, increasing the representation that I think we need. That comes from friends and family and people who I've just met in passing, either at events or in public, or it may be a friend of a friend. They say the same thing, and that's really surprising because again, it's not something that anyone that I know, but again, they've thrown their support behind me because of the fact that they understand that the importance of having the representation in our town and kind of what that means for the Chinese American population and kind of how that is expanding, essentially doubling, the representation in our town, because Christine Lew actually is the only one right now who has been elected to any town council in Long Island. So again, you think about it, like all of Long Island is huge, and she's actually the only Chinese American right now, and me hopefully winning in November would just essentially double that. And again, it just kind of gives that hope and that encouragement for, Chinese Americans, whether they're a little older or even the younger generation, to kind of say, you know what, this is something that I can achieve, right? Jason is just someone in my town or someone that I know who lives in Roslyn as well. And he just stepped up and, is now able to kind of represent us in a greater fashion.
So one of the things that we talked about in our pre-recording chat was you had mentioned that there was a cultural hesitancy to get into politics. Can you talk a little bit more about that and maybe, look at it through the lens of these people are really excited that you are running and that there is going to be more representation, but also what is this hesitancy that is the cultural phenomenon in the Chinese culture, and how are you working through that?
Yeah, I think it really, even between my grandmother and my parents and my upbringing, I think Chinese Americans and maybe to a wider degree Asian Americans, right? They don't like to bring focus to themselves, right? They want to kind of go about their day and do what they need to do, right? Live their day, support their family, raise their family, and they almost never want to put a spotlight on themselves. Jumping into politics, obviously, that's the opposite, right? You're putting the spotlight on yourself of this is who I am, this is what I represent, and it brings a larger focus to me in particular. And again, it kind of goes against that cultural kind of nuance that, existed, a little today, more so with prior generations. And I think even in politics, people don't want to get involved with it because again, it's so polarizing. I think people get a little hesitant in the Asian community of wanting to get involved with that. But I think hopefully with me stepping forward, that kind of removes that stigma that it doesn't matter, where you land. If you have a conviction or you kind of feel a certain way, there's no reason why you can't step up. You can't, want to, get into public service for the benefit of others.
What about what you were saying is, I think you were describing humility, and there's maybe a greater value of placed on humility in Chinese American culture, and the crazy thing about running for office is it's hard to stay humble because the whole focus is on you and putting yourself out there in the spotlight and shining a light on yourself. And of course, you can be humble. I consider you a humble guy, but it's hard to look humble when you're running for office. So maybe I was thinking that might have something to do with that hesitancy.
Yeah, I think again, just kind of building on that, my grandmother was very much like this, and I think to a degree my parents are as well. They don't want to feel like they need help, right? Again, it's the humility aspect. It's like, okay, like I can do what I need to do, and I'll do it by myself. Which is again, it's kind of you want to be, humble in that respect, and asking for help isn't common. I guess it depends on what it is, but I think in this respect, it's you don't want to feel like you're bothering somebody. And I think that's kind of what my grandmother always said to me. Like she doesn't want to feel like a headache. She doesn't want to feel like she's bothering someone. She'll figure it out, or at least ask kind of within a smaller group of friends and family to kind of help her if she needs something. But again, it's never like a widespread thing that is communicated outwardly. That it's outside the family four walls, if I want to put it that way.
Do you know how big Jason, how big is what percentage of the population of North Hempstead is Asian? Do you know?
I think it's about 30%.
30%.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing. So
That's
talking about
significant.
250,000 people in the town of North Hempstead, and roughly 80,000 of them are Asian American, and they've had all of one representative in the history of the town, and that representative is not town-wide. Christine Lew is just one legislative district, so it's really 1/6 of the town.
Yep.
So to me, that the first Asian American elected to townwide office representing 80,000 people, it's a very, very big deal. It's a very big honor. It's very, very exciting. At the same time, I feel sometimes uncomfortable about identity politics too much. And I don't want to be elected because I stand for, Jewish values and I stand against anti-Semitism. I want that to be part of why I get elected, but I really want to get elected for everything, that I represent and who I am as a person and as a leader. Jason, how do you tease out that, desire to be the first townwide Asian American representative from the rest of you and the rest of why you're running? Like, how do you sort of manage that friction?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. Again, there's a fine line. I think for me, it's just telling people why I would do a good job, right? I think people really right now just need results. They want to feel like their town is doing something for them. And again, to not just focus on that message with the Chinese community or the Asian community, right? Again, it's like anything else. It's like a job. You want to hire the best person for the job, not necessarily because of what they look like or kind of one particular value about them, but it's kind of like everything. For me, it's staying true to myself, right, within that message that, yes, I am Chinese American. Yes, this is my upbringing, my background. And again, that kind of has put me where I am. It is who I am today because of my upbringing and my background. But again, the main message for me is just making sure people understand that I have a wealth of experience, right? I have ideas that nobody has actioned over the last few years that I think can really benefit the town and make people feel like, all right, this guy's doing something. This guy's really trying to make the progress because he knows that is what we need and it's what's right rather than what's maybe convenient for someone else.
Cool. But potentially very divisive topic, but I mentioned this a little bit before we started recording. I know that when I was a kid, I was the victim of anti-Semitism from a very religious Jewish guy, who he literally spit on my car because my family was driving on a Saturday, which is against the rules if you're ultra Orthodox. And he said, "Are you Jewish?" And we said, yes, we're Jewish, and he spit on our car and said, you're not Jewish. It was a very traumatizing experience, like anti-Semitism from within. To what extent are Asian Americans from, Korea versus China versus Japanese versus other heritage, to what extent do you think there is racism, sort of Asian hate or racism between ethnic groups?
I wouldn't say it's much, at least in my experience. I think more so now. Obviously, growing up is totally different. But like now, I think people look at not necessarily like the specific Chinese American or Korean American. It's just more about kind of that the Asian American group. Like we're all one kind of demographic. And I think for them, it's like we have the same. A lot of us have the same values. A lot of us have the same thoughts and issues. So again, it comes down to having that, because we have that, there isn't much of that divide in between kind of the specific groups. So I think going forward, I think Korean Americans or Japanese Americans who see my name or who meet me will say it's really great to kind of see another person who is Asian, who wants to run for office, who's willing to put themselves out there to be elected, to represent more of us, that I think they'll see, rather than just being, oh, I'm Chinese, where they may be Korean or Japanese or whatever else.
Cool. By the way, speaking of racism, kind of a funny ongoing joke here, because we mentioned Christine. Christine's last name, the first Asian American elected, is also Lew.
Yes.
So of course we have Christine Lew and now Jason Lew, and lots of people are like, wait a minute, are you guys related? Now the good news is they spell their names differently. So anyone that sees it in writing knows pretty, clearly that they're not related. But what's your running joke? Is that you guys are cousins or something, or?
Yeah. So when she first asked me, I said to myself, I was like, great. Now when she introduces me, they're gonna think that her husband or her cousin or somebody in her family is now running for office. And we've gotten that. Funny enough, like we go to events, we're standing next to each other, and obviously when you introduce each other, it's just Lew or Lew. There's no spelling associated to it. But we have to kind of preface that with, we're not related, but we're good friends.
I do. Well, Jason was our very first guest, but our next guest, we went straight to the top, Jess. Not that Jason, obviously you're a great guest as well, but I'm super excited. Next week we're going to have Jay Jacobs, the chairman of the New York State Democratic Party. And it's sort of full circle, because I mentioned in the very first episode of The Candidate, my first meeting in Jay's office, where there was like pictures of him with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And it was really, really intimidating. And now, of course, several weeks later, we've become friends, and he's been an amazing supporter of my campaign. So I'm just super excited to have him on the podcast. And but he'll be a tough act to follow. So I appreciate, Jason, you stopping by for a couple episodes with us.
Absolutely. Really excited, really happy to kind of jump in and kind of get to know you, Jess, and then kind of be part of this.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jason. And thank you so much, Dave. And don't forget, subscribe, like, follow.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Paid for by the Friends of Dave Kerpen.
Thanks for going behind the scenes with us on The Candidate. If you enjoyed getting the real story about running for office, take a moment to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us. See you next time.